I'd been serving as vice president at Bethel Bible College and head of the intercultural studies department, spending most of my time, though, teaching and seeing wonderful things coming out of that, especially in the line of discipleship. I felt that the Holy Spirit said to me, "You're done here now." And I said, "Oh, God, I've been working on this mission program for 16 years. I finally got everything in line. It's perfect now." And he said, and I said, "Okay, well, I know you got something, and I'll do it." Ramadan to the Muslim is like Christmas to the Christian. And at the end of Ramadan, it's a big celebration. They play games, they have feasting, and invite neighbors, and it's just a great time. To get invited to that is a really good privilege. And it was so fun because we sat down in the first village, and there was a table that was about twice as big as this one, just loaded with all kinds of really fancy food. And just as after I sat down, a young man sat down beside me, and he immediately wanted to start talking about Jesus.
Really?
There's a tremendous hunger among Muslims to find out the truth about Jesus, because most Muslims that we may not be aware of are not satisfied with what they're told about Jesus. Because they read their Quran and Jesus is mentioned 25 times, and almost every time he's talked about as being the son of a virgin. He has the power to heal. He has the power to raise people from the dead. All these mentions, but Muhammad, their famous prophet, he was only mentioned twice.
Wow.
And there's nothing said in that direction. And that alone has convinced people to get out of Islam and to follow after Christ, because he's the one who does things. I had met one of the pastors, and he told me this story that he and his wife had left their village to go get some things, and as soon as they got out of the village, they got a news that a terrorist group was going to attack their village. They have 2 teenage daughters, and so they texted them really quick to say, "Get out of there as fast as you can." And the eldest daughter did, but the 14-year-old did not, and she was murdered, along with several others in the village. Well, the pastor had been invited many, many times to join a Christian militia group, and he'd always turned them down, saying, "That's not, for us, that's not what we should be about." But with the murder of his own daughter, and you can imagine what they do, because they're pretty consistent at what they do. And he said, "Okay, I'm joining." And he notified them. They made him their leader because he was the most educated in the group. And they made a plan for retaliation, and they would hit them at 4 o'clock in the morning on a Monday morning. Well, about midnight, the Holy Spirit came to the pastor and he says, "Listen, you make up your mind right here, right now. You're either going to trust me to work through your forgiveness of these people so that we can bring peace to this all. But if you decide that you want to go ahead and do this retaliation, you will live in blood the rest of your life. It's your choice." Well, he wrestled in prayer over that. And when the rest of the militia showed up, he said, "Brothers, we can't do this. We're Christians. We need to be different. And if Christians aren't different, why in the world are we inviting them to become Christian?" They had lost family members as well. But he managed to calm them down, and they decided that they would not retaliate, that they would walk in forgiveness. And it took this pastor a year and a half to finally come to the place where he could fully feel that he had forgiven those who had murdered his daughter and set him free. God took all the anger out of his heart, gave him a heart of love for the Muslims. He began to pray for them and start reaching out to bring the truth of Christ to them. When one day, one of those terrorists walked into his house, didn't knock anything, just hit the door open, walked right past him. He said, "I was just shaking. I didn't know what this guy wanted. He's got an AK-47, he's got hand grenades hanging all over him and everything." Points to the pastor and says, "You, with me right now." And so he said, "Man, I was so scared. I had no idea what they were going to do." And he said he was so scared, it took him a long time before he got the nerve up to ask, "Where are we going?" And the soldier just quipped. He said, "We're going to the main camp." It took him a lot longer after that to ask again, "Why are we going to the main camp?" "Oh, the head guy wants to see you." Well, he said, "I know I'm Filipino, but I went pale. I just lost all my color." I could imagine that he just wants to use me as an example. He's got all his young recruits there. He's going to have, do head removing practice, with me and all this kind of stuff. And all this was going through his mind. But they finally got to the camp, and he was seated, and the head guy came in and sat down. He says, about a year and a half ago, we made a raid on your village. Is that right? He says, yes, that's true. And I understand your daughter was one of the people that we killed. Is that true? He said, yes, it is. Well, we were expecting you to retaliate, but you guys didn't. And so I sent some people in to find out why you weren't retaliating. And we heard that you had decided to forgive us. Is that true? He said, yes, it is. And he was quiet for a moment. And he said, well, I have my top 600 men here in this camp. And I'm going to give you the next 3 hours to tell us about your Jesus. Forgiveness had opened a big door that, had we tried to just go in any other direction, would have possibly not have been as near as effective as this was.
I think that's a good word for us today, because with everything going on in our country and the recent events right here in our own backyard, we tend to go the other direction.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you had a word, Bill, for our brothers and sisters here in Southern Cal as far as how we reach Muslims, what would you say to them?
Whatever or whoever we fear the most is what or who we serve.
Yeah.
And if we learn to fear God the most, we'll serve Him out of love.
Yes.
Wherever you see persecution of the church, that's where it's growing the strongest. And wherever the Muslims are, wherever there's persecution, the church is exploding in its growth.